There we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Episode 26, I think, of the Practical Magic Show. I'm really excited, Walt, to have you today. So, little intro of the show for those who may just be watching it for the first time or have even been watching it since the beginning. The Practical Magic Show for me is like the Penn and Teller of business. That was the idea from the beginning. So Penn and Teller, they do these amazing tricks, and then they tell you how they did it. And so my guests are who I experience to be the real magicians of the world, who happen to have this the whole spectrum of life that we really crave at the human level, both the practical, like the business success, the life success, the material, but also the other essence that you can tell. There's a thread that you can see as you look back on my guests, and it's the life in your eyes, the smile on your face. You are the embodiment of magic as I experience it. And so our job here today is to pull back the curtain, and what are you doing and being and thinking and believing and practicing that would allow everybody else, us muggles, to be able to access that same magic. So while you are, it's my intro of you and my experience of you. You're such a fun person to have in my life, and you kind of came out of nowhere. Like we were introduced, and now you have this foothold and presence in my life. And for me, you're a leader, you're a coach, you have an incredible organization, you are a public speaker on an international level, you're an adventurer, really, like at heart to me as I see you, both in the world climbing mountains, but also to me, I think like in the business world. That's how I see you. And you coach and speak and teach on the things people want, but it's the place that you teach it from, to me, that seems really magical. So when I titled the show and our time together, it was how a life without boundaries creates magic. And so often we're talking about putting more boundaries in place, but when I look at you, I actually see a life without boundaries. I see somebody who has mastered the art of living. And I think you took that somewhere in the master and the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his love and his religion. To him, he is always doing both. So that's who you are to me. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a gift and such a pleasure. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. And that introduction so touches me because that idea of no firm boundaries between working, playing, and living was something that haunted me from long ago. It was something I was envious of. I had come out of a traditional law school. I came out of Cornell Law School in 1984. I got the job and the nice car and the nice house and the nice office and all of the bells and whistles of a successful life. And yet I was so empty inside. And my dad, I think I might have shared with you, took me to this slideshow, and it was 1985. And a photographer that I had only heard about, but who had written a book called The Art of Adventure. This photographer, Galen Rowell, one of the great outdoor adventure photographers at the time, was giving this slideshow. And my dad bought this book for me at the end. It was a coffee table book. And in the book, I had seen in the book before Galen signed it, this paragraph where he said, I am privileged to live this life where there are no firm boundaries between working and playing and living. It's just this rich, seamless whole. And I thought, oh, I want that. And so I took that book back and I took it to my hermetically sealed office on the 18th floor, and I put it on the credenza behind my desk, open to that page, and I would often turn to that page. And over the years, you know, I've come back to that, but it's always a phrase I've wanted to live toward, and that's why I'm so touched by your introduction, because it has always been an aspiration.
And I appreciate you sharing that it haunted you, because it feels like a haunting. I mean, if I look back 10 years, there's a massive difference. But if I sit back and honestly reflect on my life, I can still feel some pretty firm boundaries. Like I think one of my markers, there's two markers that I think for me will speak to knowing that I've quote made it in this arena. And one of them is a Sunday and Monday won't feel different at all. They just won't feel different, right? The gift of Sunday, not the Sunday scares or whatever people call it, but I don't feel on a Monday like I feel on a Sunday. And the other is my dog. This is such a funny thing. She's this giant, like furry hippo, basically. And she's just always there. Like, I'm ready for love and play when you're ready. And if I don't feel guilt about my dog at the end of the day, I will know that the boundaries have disappeared.
I love that. I love that. And I love, because I have such a vivid recollection of that Sunday stuff. My mother made a word up. It was called Clegsy, the Sunday Clegsies. And I would feel absolutely like nauseous on Sundays. And I remember this one Monday, and it was still when I was grappling in the wilderness with how to, create something new. I walked into the courthouse and I put my big trial bag on the conveyor, and it was going through the metal detector. And I saw the state marshal, Dave, and I said, "Hey, Dave, how are you today?" And he said, "Great, one day closer to the weekend." It was Monday. That's not the way I want to continue my life.
Yeah. Oh, that's so. I mean, I think this is so good because here's the other thing that I have experienced is that these boundaries are insidious. Meaning, when I went, because when I really look at my life, right? I only work about 27 hours a week. I can make good money, and I have my daughter who's 2, and we spend so much time together. And I live in Colorado. It's so beautiful, and I see a lot of entrepreneurs fall into the trap that I'm about to talk about, which is it still doesn't feel boundaryless because there's still this like ever reaching for more that seems to create a lot of pressure that gets in the way. And so, when I thought about our conversation today, I've been feeling a call to evolve the show a little bit. So are you down to adventure?
I'm ready for it. Bring it. Cool. Bring it.
I felt after the last couple of weeks, I'm like, there's another edge to go into. I've done a lot of exploring of how to create magic. But what I think is missing is what is a magical life really? Because I noticed that in my exploration of how to create it, and I always struggle to articulate this, the it is defined by what my current understanding is. And so it's like that, what I just talked about with entrepreneurs kind of chasing this, like I have it compared to what I wanted 10 years ago. I have it 10 times over. Why doesn't it feel the way I thought it should feel?
Yes.
So what can we play in that space of and if we get to how later, that's great. But in your experience, as you've evolved, what have you come to understand a magical life to really be? Because I think you can look at it on the outside and let's just imagine for a second that we could look at your life from the outside. It would look magical, but you could still experience it as miserable.
Yes.
Right. So I don't think the outside looking in is necessarily an accurate representation of what a magical life is.
So there's so many good threads here we can pull on. So yes, from the outside, it is, and social media is so insidious this way. We look at other people's lives and they look magical. And the truth is, I have my days where I'm kvetching with my own coach, and I remember this session not very long ago with my own coach. She had decades ago asked me to journal out my perfect day and my perfect week. And one day I was just like in complete complaining mode. And I'm trained as a Tony Robbins coach, and Tony, of course, is all about state management. She said, "Your state is bad. Why don't you just manage your state?" I don't want to manage my state. I just want to be miserable.
I totally feel that sometimes.
I just want to be miserable. I want to have a shitty state. But she said,
Oh my God, I love that.
she, she said, well, tell me what's going on. And I said, well, I'm doing this and doing this and doing this and doing this, and it's this. And she said, well, what was your day like? I said, well, I went for a run along the Irish coast and I had coffee with Anne, and she said, well, wait a minute. She said, that was your perfect life you wrote out 10 years ago. I was like, oh, that's right. It was. It is. And so it's, we're all on journeys. And so the other piece of this thread I just want to share is that I had this amazing experience for 9 weeks in Bariloche, Argentina, just before the pandemonium. And it was this experience of deep reflection and deep peace and deep connection with the mountains and deep connection with my beautiful wife, Anne, and trail running. And I came back home and I was feeling anxious and unsettled and like, I don't know what I want. And I began to play with that phrase from the Abraham Hicks work, who talks about, when you're wondering about that, say, I want to ask, or hold the statement, I want to know what I want. I want to know what I want. And so I began holding that question, journaling that question. I want to know what I want. And one day I'm like running really hard. I want to know what I want. I want to know what I want. And it was like this amazing instantaneous awareness as I was running across my beautiful land. I want what I have.
Oh. That's really, really massive.
So that's part of the work. It's because none of it's ever out there. And that's, my first book is called Journeys on the Edge, because we're always on this edge. Yes, that one. We're always on the edge of light and dark, of storm and clearing skies, of night and day. And the edge is that, we're hardwired in our humanity to want more, to create. We are creators. We are co-creators. That's one of the great gifts of our humanity, is to create. And so, we wouldn't have the Sistine Chapel or the David or the interweb or the ability to connect like this if it weren't for that. And the answers aren't ever out there. It's always here in this one and only precious moment. It's always just right here. And so that's the dialectic. That's the edge that we're always playing along, that to yearn and to also want what we have right now, here.
Yeah. Okay, I like this. I like that we are on this thread. It reminds me, my sister does channeled angel writings, and they're just unbelievable. The stuff that comes, she's like, doesn't believe that it's not her. I'm like, I love you, and I don't mean this to knock you down, but that ain't you. And one I was asking a similar question around, what do I want? And this has never, it hit me so profoundly. It's never left me. I was asking something about talking about what I want, and their response was, you never want what you want. And I was like, wow. So I love the idea behind exploring this edge between yearning and, what would you call the other side of that edge?
Being. Yeah, it's yearning and being, being present in this one and only moment. It's a place we almost never are. And there's so much magic in this moment, in this moment, in every moment. And it's in the stillness that the answers are. And how difficult it is right now to get still and to be still and to soak in that. for those of us who are peak performers and high achievers and we're driven, we're always in that moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And, the social media and I find that even though I have a monastic thread to me and I yearn for silence, even when I go there, as a result of being always on, it's like a high voltage wire that's on the ground. It actually takes a while just to settle down and to be still.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
in that stillness is where the magic is. That's where we discover the magic, in that stillness.
So I love that we're in this conversation, and I know exactly what you mean when we moved to Denver, Boulder to be in more nature. And I tell myself, I notice this a lot. And because I've lived in Pittsburgh for like 8 years, no one ever came to visit. And I've lived in Boulder 8 months. I can't get rid of visitors.
I hear you.
I won't take it personally. But so what happens is I end up taking a lot of friends and family into the mountains. And one of the things that I often talk about is you have to sit there long enough for the vibration of your body to match the vibration of nature. And you'll feel it slow down. It takes a while. Sometimes you can feel you're resisting it.
Oh, yes.
And then when you match and you feel that you match, it does feel like magic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is that universal vibration that you are just part of at that point. And those for me are where those thin places are, where, everything begins to open. And a lot of us don't have the time to get there, or we kind of make it a mission to get there, and you can't do that either. I want the 997 program to get my vibrational harmony in place.
You guys, we can't what we need to invent. This is a total sidetrack, but we could both quit all of our jobs if we could invent this. You know how you could have like a GPS and you put the GPS in your phone or in a watch and it takes you right there?
Yes.
We need to do that inside. What's the
yes. And if you buy today, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh God. Okay, so our next business plan, we'll continue from there. So oh, go ahead.
No, but I was just, that nature is for me, that's a refuge to go to, where I can actually pick that vibration up pretty quickly in the mountains. If I go up above the trees, up into Colorado, up into the White Mountains in New Hampshire, wherever, mountains are a wonderful place. And like all of it, it's nearer than near. That's from our scriptures. The divine is nearer than your breath. It's nearer than near, and it's always here. I had this coming back to my experience in Bariloche. I came back, and then the pandemonium settled in, and I was a little bit, pissed off, and I was kind of stuck. And so I'm running in this beautiful landscape, and I'm thinking, I had this amazing portal. The portal had just opened into this amazing expanse, and I'm just running along. And I looked at this cow. I shouldn't say this on live Facebook Live, but the cow looked back at me and said, "The portal is here." Like, what? The cow went back to munching. Like, but
so good.
Edit that part out.
No, that's the title of the episode.
but it was like boom, and it was like it's here, and so it's coming back to the here and now. It's coming back to the here and now, and we're truly present. Everything can open to us.
So I want to take this into, I think, something I've been observing in myself and in some of my clients and some of the people I know too. The conversations so far, they all come back to this, that it's being. The magic is in the being. But what I noticed on the journey to really getting that it seems like you're schizophrenic, right? You're either like obsessing in the doing or like living in the being. And what I think the magic is, as I'm hearing you, is understanding how to integrate those.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So it seems, at least for me, and I've had periods in my life where I'm better at this than others. I wouldn't say this is like my Olympic gold medal season, but there can be such a fracture, right? I can sit and meditate and be in the mountains and have practices in being, and then I go to work and it's like I scrap it all and I find this pressure filled doing. And so it seems like it's a real art form to integrate those two pieces. What does it look like in your experience when we bring being into doing?
Mm. So I love that you used art, because it is an art, and it always is a work in process. It's not a destination. People think they're going to get there, and there's no there to get to. And it's always, when I started this work 15 years ago and started speaking about this work, I was big into work-life balance. We're all going to have work-life balance. But there's just life. There's just life, and sometimes it's, working with our kids. Sometimes it's helping our partners. Sometimes it's, we're deep into a product launch right now. Sometimes it's, it's heavy into the business side. And so there's no balance to seek. There's just life. And it's honoring all of those pieces, and it's being aware of the necessity of each of those pieces. Mm. So it's important to do our work in the world. It's important to serve and to touch the lives of other people. And it's important to withdraw and to take that time and space to connect with that deeper well that gives us the energy. And so it's a constant movement in and out. And that requires an unsexy word, which is discipline. There's the old forms of monastic discipline, and I've stolen this phrase. She originated it, but now I attribute it to me. It's with discipline comes freedom. And, it's true, to set aside the time and the space to be, to set aside the time and the space to connect with those we love and not become so unidimensional. And that's a work in process.
Yeah, I can, this morning I've had a morning practice in many different forms for lots of years, but after having a kid, you're like, oh no, that's every day. Sometimes it even starts at 4:30 because I'm like, I'll be 10% more tired. I just want to have a little more time for myself. But what I noticed lately is that I had been resisting, like I wasn't feeling excited about it. And I realized that I wasn't really enjoying it. It was this coming from this place of like, I need to figure it out. I need to I don't know, like, you start exploring like inner patterns in yourself. I'm like, I need to find the source of this pattern. And it just became this really like intense, unsatisfying experience. And so this morning I just lit the candle, sat with my coffee in the dark, and I was like, I'm just going to sit here. Like, I don't care if I do anything else. I'm just going to sit here. And actually, I ended up having like a really important insight about kind of what you were just sharing.
So that's the edge, Vanessa, because what I find is that those of us who are really disciplined and have an awareness of this, we have our morning practices. I started my morning. I was a single dad. I raised 3 young boys on my own while managing my law firm. I had hair back then, and that's when I began to play with 4:15 and 4:30 as the beginning of my day. But what I find is that, and I found it for me, just like you, is that when we create these practices and disciplines, we do them we almost weaponize them. So so then they just become like another thing to do. It's like I've got to meditate. I've got to install my Facebook pixel. Done and done.
Oh God.
But what you did was brilliant, and it is just to let go of it, not to not do it, but just to let go of the militaristic approach to it and allow the divine, allow the universe, whatever we want to call it, just to enter into, so allow us to just steep in that great expanse. And that's brilliant what you did.
And so, what does that same process look like inside the workday? We have to give a little context, like just an example to frame it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it, but let's, for our listeners, let's do that.
Okay.
But I know of which you speak.
Okay. Then, actually, if you don't mind, I'd rather you. Could you come up with an example of like what that doesn't look like in the workday?
So years ago, a lot of people. My second book is The Power Principles of Time Mastery. Years ago, I had a lawyer referred to me. Yes, that's it. I'm waiting for the movie. Years ago, a lawyer was referred to me, and ostensibly for time management and productivity. And we're on our first call, and I said, Sean, can you screen shoot your GCal for me? Because he used GCal, and he did, and he sent it over to me, and it was beautiful. It was red and green and orange and magenta and purple and yellow and black. And I said, so, dude, where's the white space? And he said, what? I said, the white space. He said, what's white space? I said, it's the space between the colors. He said, I didn't know you were supposed to have white space. I said, well, I don't know about you, but for me as a busy lawyer, I always found that things took longer than I would estimate. And so I would never feel caught up. I would always be breathless, just like you are. I said, one of the first things I want to invite you to do is, rather than have all these beautiful colors back to back, to actually create some white space in between, like 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And then, if you're on time, you actually have a little time to read your Kindle or walk outside. And if you're running behind, like we often do, you're not breathless. Well, you try that, and he did. And that little concept of white space. So I was working with a senior partner at a litigation firm, and she had taken on this. She said, well, sometimes I come out from court, and before I get into my car, I just open the door, and I look up into the sky, and I just breathe. I'm just there for a minute or two, and I'm thinking about our work and this idea of white space. She said, it just changes everything for me. Just to pause. Rubinstein was once asked, what's the secret of your beautiful piano music? And he said, well, anybody can play the notes, but the pauses, that's where the magic is.
I'm laughing because I think about my calendar. There's plenty of white space. Plenty of white space. But what I do in the white space is like, I need to use this space. Like, I don't put anything.
My pixel. I want to get my pixels in.
I don't bring white. I don't bring space to the white.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so I think I shared with you, this is where boundaries, the other edge of boundaries is important. I shared with you my beginning of my keynote is, isn't it wonderful that we're entrepreneurs? We have such freedom. We have freedom and flexibility. We have the freedom and the flexibility to work whatever 18 hours of the day we want. And the pandemonium, COVID, made it worse. It's just like it just became this one big furball of work. And so it's really easy to lose those boundaries. But the key is to look at that white space and take your tea or your coffee and go outside and sit on the deck or a glass of wine or whatever your beverage of choice is at the moment, and just to be still, to be still. I saw a phrase the other day. It was by a cardinal in the Catholic Church. Sarah, I think, is his last name, and there was someone who was quoting the phrase, I think from Ezekiel, "Be still and know that I am God. Be still." And he took it and said, "Be silence."
Hmm.
Oh, be silence. That's like,
Right away, the mountains come back because one of the things, my mom was just in town, so we were up in the mountains, and I said, "Isn't it amazing how loud the silence is?" She was like, "Oh, yes, that's what it is."
mhm. Yes, yeah, yes.
So let me ask you this. I will call it the final question, but
What? What?
I know, but
What?
probably a series of
We're just
explorations.
in the middle of.
I
We're in
know,
the middle of it.
I know, I know. If we decide we want to go longer, it's our show. We can do whatever we want. I'll tell the producer. Um, what happens? Because I think this is where let me think about this for a second. What happens when you bring that silence and that space and that magic to your day? Because I know I've experienced it. But when that becomes the norm more than the crowdedness, what changes inside? What changes outside? What changes professionally? Like when that really becomes the norm.
So you modeled the preface to this question so beautifully. You closed your eyes and you took a breath and you went deep within yourself. And then you framed this beautiful question for us to explore. And so in that moment of stillness, you connected with something so much deeper.
Mm.
And we can do that in any moment. And by doing that in any moment, the boundaries then begin to open up, in which there are no firm boundaries between working and playing and living. It does just become this seamless dance, and it's joyful and it's playful and it's fun. And that's what it should be.
Mm.
You know, we are at our hearts and souls the co-creators of this magnificent thing that is our lives. And as co-creators of it, you know, creativity is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be playful. And in that space, when we can connect with the silence, when we can connect with that deeper place within us, it all begins to open up, and it feels like play. It feels like flow, and everything just is. And it's just this thing of beauty.
I'm gonna honor the part of me that's like, yeah, yeah, okay. And I know what you're saying because I have experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I think I'm noticing in me just about my life is that I think that can look several different ways. It can look like, um, oh, I'm just going to use a work day because that's so the practical magic edge, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It can look like I just connect with that, not just, I connect with that deeper inner space. And all of a sudden, the day just feels more meaningful. Like the things I was already going to do, I still do them.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, feels better, more enjoyable. Then another expression of that, I think, looks like maybe I'm a little scattered or not totally clear or focused, or there's a particular project. I have a talk that I'm giving a big corporation in November. And if I slow down and connect to that space, that talk will probably write itself in 20 minutes. But then there's this other edge that I think that I might be walking towards. And that's where the kind of like, whoa, whoa, hold on energy is coming from, where it's like when you connect to that deeper space and it's telling you to go in a direction that makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
That you're like, oh, but if I put time and energy towards that, what's it going to do over here? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that goes back to the question that what you were saying earlier when you were saying, like, what do I want? Show me what
Mm-hmm.
I want. Or what was the
Mm-hmm.
phrase that you were
I
using?
want to know the Abraham Hicks question. Esther Hicks says, I want to know what I want.
Yeah. So can just for I suppose purely selfish reasons in this moment, can you talk about that third edge where and I think a lot of people are in this space too, especially after the pandemic, when the overarching path of their life is totally been shaken up. I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are really questioning, what am I doing?
Yes. Yes. So is the third edge
The third
the
edge is
edge?
where you're getting quiet and life is pointing you in a different direction that feels like,
Mm-hmm.
how the hell is that going to happen?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what's the name of this show?
The Practical Magic Show.
Yeah, practical. So magic and just asking.
I'm with you. Go on.
Just asking. So they always go. That's the edge here, Vanessa. Is they always go hand in hand. We're given these great things that are our minds to use, and sometimes we're pulled in a direction, and we may say, "Not yet," and the pull will say, "Yeah, now,"
Mm,
and we may need to go that way.
mm,
Sometimes we need to honor what's going on in our lives right now.
mm,
There was a long period of time in my life where I was raising kids, and I knew there was a different way to go, but I answered it as best I could at the time.
mm,
And so I think we have to honor the practicality of where we are and the magic of where we are. I think
mm,
it's both and. But here's what I've discovered is that still small voice won't go away.
mm,
If that direction is the direction that is calling you, that place in your heart never lies. Your heart always knows.
mm.
Your heart always knows. And if you're pulled, if it continues to pull you, that's real. And you need to listen to that.
That's such a fantastic. I love that answer so much. So much. I often say, like, your intuition is never wrong. Might make a mess, but your intuition doesn't really care about that. It's like it cares about what happens after the mess. But I really do love that because it is really true. It is
Mhm.
really true. And
Yeah.
so I heard a couple things that I just want to call out. That one, it even takes a little bit of practice of that stillness to understand, like, okay, this emerging truth or direction isn't going anywhere. So that part I can, just come to terms with. But then kind of bringing back in, honestly, bringing that intuition back into the practicality is also really smart. I think I struggle with that because I have a 2-year-old. I love her to death. I don't want to put her in school 5 days a week. I have this
Right?
conversation with my husband every week because every week I'm like, I didn't get done what I want to get done. He's, of course you didn't, and you're not going to. I'm like,
You have a 2-year-old.
totally. And that's like, it's okay. So it's an interesting thing to understand the intuitive pull, and then also to slow down to tap into your intuitive choice about how to
Mhm.
meet that pull. I think that's really powerful. That's really incredible.
Mhm. Practical magic.
Mm, there we go. So is there anything else you feel like if we were and actually one question is going to be really short, and it's a fun one that I've just recently started thinking of, but I really like it. So before that one though, is there anything that you would feel like if we hung up right now, you would just be, oh, I can't believe we didn't get to share that piece.
Mm. Yeah. If you feel that pull repeatedly, don't ignore it. I think it was Oliver Wendell Holmes said, um, so many people die with their music still in them.
Mm,
And if the last 18 months have shown us anything, it's that tomorrow is promised to no one.
Mm-hmm.
And as Joan Didion in her beautiful memoir, The Year of Magical Thinking, starts the memoir, it says, life changes in an instant, in an ordinary instant. And it does.
Mm-hmm.
And so while we may, some of us have lifetimes to play and to experiment with magic, this one and only precious life is a gift. And to tell ourselves the story of maybe someday we'll get to that is a lie.
Mm.
So if you feel the pull, listen to the pull. Follow the heart, because the heart always tells the truth.
Mm. Beautiful. So the last question is, if you had to give the entire teaching of create a life without boundaries, creating magic in one word,
Mm-hmm.
what would the word be?
Love.
Didn't even hesitate. Thank you. So for those who are inevitably drawn to spending more time with you, what's the best way for them to work with you, speak with you, learn from you?
Lean in, ladies and gentlemen. This is very complicated. WaltHampton.com. Made it up myself.
You have an easier name than I do. That's why it works. I'm like, I got to come up with a new website name. No one's come up with a name. Thank you, Walt, so much. This is just
what a gift and a privilege to be with you. Thank you so much.